Dude, I am one of the lucky ones, and I'm really not paying that much for healthcare. It's mostly mental health stuff, and doing the Affordable Care Act stuff at the deadline on the 15th. I was in a murderous rage. It was just so disgusting.
Is it more worthwhile for you to do that than just pay the penalty?
Oh yeah, I mean, I never ever go without health insurance. It's just like $8,000 or whatever won't ruin my life, but $100,000 definitely fucking will. So I'm just not even gonna risk it. I mean, that's why it's so infuriating, is they're holding people hostage for fucking $300 a month.
Right. I mean, the year I had it,
the year you had health insurance?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for real, the one year I had it, it was at the end of the year, I was like, oh, that was not worth it. And then that took away a lot of my money. And even had I had to go to the doctor or anything like that, it wouldn't have helped at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then the next year I applied and got through, and the plan that I was gonna get, that I got approved for, was a lot better than the year before. Mm-hmm. And then the day before it was supposed to kick in, they were like, oh, you actually don't get it because you didn't give us this one thing. And I was like, you never asked for that? Because you told me that I had it already.
Yeah.
I was in a lot of medical debt for a while because something weird happened when I went to the hospital in 2014 when I got hit by a car, where I thought I was still covered under my parents, but then by the time everything got processed, I had it. You were
27.
I was, and I didn't apply right, so I went without health insurance for half of a year, and it sucked because I also had to pay the penalty, even though I had it for half. Does that make any sense?
Right.
It was really annoying.
Well, the penalty's gone now.
Yep.
Yeah, this was in 2014.
Yeah.
It's been gone for a couple of years.
You don't qualify for Medicaid under the expansion? You make too much money?
Yep.
Dude,
it's ridiculous.
Well,
how? What's your yearly?
I make 20 to 25 grand.
Yeah.
That's too much.
That's too much.
Yeah, it's 16 or something like that.
That's insane.
And you would qualify for cost sharing reductions, which are instead of having to pay everything until you hit your deductible, you only have to pay $40 a visit or whatever, which is still too much.
What if you have kids?
Then the poverty line is different.
Higher.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but is it still because I think it's for free lunch you have to make I know they're totally different programs, but you have to make under $24,000 a year or something
as a household.
Yeah. No. Well, I think
because babies, they do not make a lot of money.
True.
I mean, unless you pimp them out.
I think for reduced, it's
then I make a lot of money.
I think for reduced, it's under 40 as a household, and for free, it's under 20 something as a household.
Oh,
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But I could be wrong about the numbers.
Means testing. Sorry, I can't make it. Uncut Gems is really good, and I can't stop crying.
I want to see it for sure.
Yeah, the only zeitgeist.
That movie is made for my childhood. Kevin Garnett and Adam Sandler were the most important people to me until I started this podcast. And now it's you guys.
Am I Kevin Garnett or Adam Sandler?
Kevin Garnett.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Guess I'm Adam Sandler. 8 crazy nights. Jew. You know those one word impression shows or whatever? That would be my
Golden.
Yeah. But anyway, so how much do you know about this? Nothing?
Nothing.
A little bit.
Okay, so in Finland, 700 postal workers were being moved to a new collective bargaining agreement that would involve a 30% pay cut. And so the postal workers went on strike. And then the...
everyone else.
Yeah. The aviation went on strike, and they refused to unload shit on the ports. People who worked the port, longshoremen, refused to work overtime and shit. completely shutting down the country, and then like the person who ran the post office resigned, and then the prime minister resigned because they both lied about. They were both like, we didn't know that they were going to do this, and they absolutely did. And so,
holy shit!
yeah.
So wait, this was something. So it wasn't like they were inspired to do this by the initial strike, by the postal worker strike. It was all planned.
What was all planned?
Like you were saying, the prime minister. So like it wasn't like, oh, the postal workers are striking now. The aviation it's going to strike. It was like this was all.
Oh no. The basically the prime minister knew about the pay cuts. And lied about it, and so the ruling coalition was like, we don't have faith in this person.
Got
so
it.
Got it. The
holy shit
anti-Rene. Anyway, so yeah, and I was telling
it is one of those things where there are like a few strategic workforces that just have that capability.
Right.
No matter truckers, if truckers go on strike, everything's done.
Right.
If people that work at airports go on strike, everything's done.
Yeah. Air traffic controllers, right?
I was gonna say people who work in like the medical field, but whatever. America would just let everyone die.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
that'd be fine. But if you couldn't get packages, shit would be fucked up.
Right. Yeah. But,
yeah, ports too, though.
Yeah, and it's getting very little media coverage, even though it's just. I mean, it's so like. It's such a good case for unions. Mm-hmm. Like the union density there is like 75%, and like
it's also why people are really afraid of unions.
700 people. That's it. It was just everyone was pissed about 700 people's pay cuts, and they knocked out the head of state.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's fucking insane. Yeah.
I mean, Americans are just so like beaten down to where we'll take pretty much anything. Like if they don't let teachers like smoke in school in France, they're like, we shut it down. we don't work if we can't fuck at work. They kick ass, man. They're good people.
Yeah.
Spanish people too. Like, what do you mean I can't sleep on the job?
I have this vague memory, I don't know if this is real, of like not being able to go anywhere in Argentina because dairy farmers were dumping milk on the roads because they were on strike, and they just like.
How old were you when you were in Argentina?
21.
I was like, he's never been to Argentina. This was definitely a dream.
Yeah, no,
they were dumping milk on the road.
Yeah, exactly. This is the appropriate response. Yeah. You were both just like, yeah, milk on the road. Of course. Why wouldn't you pour milk? I mean, I pour milk on the road all the time.
I just don't see. I did not immediately envision that being harmful, but yeah.
It's like the old,
Well, they're also blocking the roads.
Right. True.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this actually happened or if they just talked about it on The Sopranos, but garbage workers kind of being like the unions being controlled by the mob, going on strike and just dumping garbage on people's fucking front lawns. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
That's the only kind of politics I actually care about. Shit like that.
It's petty, like
yeah. We're gonna pour the milk everywhere. We're gonna put garbage on your lawn. You know.
Yeah.
Shut it down stuff. If it ain't stankin', I'm not with it.
Yeah.
That's the first time I've noticed your ring ever.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's very nice.
Thank you.
You shrunk when I looked at it. I don't know why.
No, it was because both of y'all looked at me like I was supposed to say something, and I'm still just getting my sea legs.
Getting your sea legs, yeah. Yeah. Today marks 2 weeks, though, right?
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought. I think I was not as much of... Well...
Are you going to do it forever?
No. Well, I'm just like...
Not one day at a time.
Exactly. Like, not even thinking about it. I don't feel like I need to. So that kind of takes some of the wind out of it.
Yeah.
But it also, like, makes it... Like, the fact that it's less serious makes it less annoying, you know? Like, it feels like more of a choice and less like something I have to do.
You mean drinking or not drinking?
Not drinking feels like something that I'm choosing to
do. So
have you coupled it with trying to change a bunch of other stuff about your life? I feel like people do that a lot, where they're like, I'm going to stop drinking, and also I'm going to get jacked and read more and get everything done.
I am reading a lot more, but it's just because I can't sleep because, or at least for like an extra hour and a half, I can't sleep.
That's not that bad.
That's not bad at all.
Also, I never wake up feeling good because any alcohol. I always feel like shit when I wake up. And like if I have to go to work, I'll get out of bed and feel okay. But if I don't, I'll just sleep until 1.
Yeah.
Because of alcohol.
Yeah.
So you probably getting less sleep is still good.
Yeah. And so like I'm like adhering to my routines a little bit more stickily. Like I'm on a little streak for writing
Oh,
stuff.
I feel like that board said the same thing for a year. Am I wrong, or did it say different stuff?
No, I mean it's been growing steadily. I 3 months I didn't do it, and so that's what the line is.
Okay.
Wait, what line?
The yellow, the orange lines.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's like I don't know. That's more like 2 months actually. But yeah. So
Wait, 420 words the other day?
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
I hate it when people are like, if you work at a computer, you don't have a real job, because I'm at a computer for most of my job.
Yeah.
But I also am like working directly with kids for half of it, so I feel like that's why I don't get a lot of the stuff I need to get done on the computer done. But all the stuff I'm getting done on the computer is like reserving things so that kids can have sports teams, so I don't feel like it's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm like, there are a lot of jobs that are computer jobs that I don't think are real, but like there's a lot of emails that if they don't get sent, things don't happen, unfortunately, because, that's how we communicate.
My email inbox is just like a wasteland of
Mine is
advertisements
horrific.
and shit. Like no one emails me anything
I have 5
important.
email accounts.
Once a year, someone from my past will be like, "Hey, I just wanted to say what's up," and I won't see it for a year because like it's just the whole thing is just like Postmates wants to kill you.
I got a Facebook request that I hadn't seen. It was like a year and a half old, and it was some guy that was like, it started off really sweet. It was like, "Saw your show tonight. Just want to say, don't give up. You're really good at this, and you have a natural gift. Also, sorry I didn't friend you. I try not to friend people unless I know them. Hope you don't mind." And I was just like, how did you just reject me when you were the one that messaged me?
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't friend you.
Yeah.
And then of course the horrible, oh my God, when I think about missing this email, I want to fucking kill myself. I've missed so many like devastating, potentially, probably not, but potentially life-changing things for comedy by not checking my email or by opening it and not seeing things in like a sea of unread shit emails I don't care about.
Right.
Because I don't expect to get those emails.
Right.
That I just need to start using my work email. Anyway, it keeps me up at night when I think about what I missed out on, like submitting to the
JFL.
The part where you have to be asked to, yeah, and then also and also missing the email that I forgot that I was on Comedians You Should Know in New York, which is like not a life-changing thing, but it would have been really, really cool.
Yeah.
And it makes me want to die.
Yeah.
But as Julie said, maybe I would have been murdered
By
the people at the show. I could have been murdered on my way there.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's true. It's like that is it Broad City? No. High Maintenance, where Hannibal plays a comic and there's like a shooting at his show.
I don't know. I've never seen High Maintenance.
I haven't seen the series, but I've seen the web series, and it's good. But yeah, there could have been a mass shooting. Someone could have been like, "I heard she's a feminist." Yeah.
No one thinks that.
No one thinks you're a feminist. Yeah. What you got there, bud?
Apparently, fucking Pete Buttigieg sent out some email basically being like, "Hey, if you donate a lot to our campaign, you can like shape our you can like be officially involved in our campus." So like explicitly being like pay to play.
Wait, I want to see it.
That
Yeah. I mean, that's like already how it worked, but I guess he just like sent it out. Caitlin linked to it on Facebook.
Okay. I want to see if, like, I know that's probably what he meant, but I want to see how explicitly he said it.
I mean, there's like excerpts in this thing. It's
Dangle's influence.
I'll dangle some fucking influence. You know what I'm saying? Talking about my dick.
Nice one. Buttigieg is starting to get the heat that Kamala got before she dropped out. Like, there's been like 3 bad Pete headlines. Like the Wine Cave, this, fucking the 12% of Buttigieg supporters would vote for Trump instead of anyone else. Like,
It's so funny that the wine cave thing stuck.
I don't know about the wine cave thing.
you do it.
He held a fundraiser in a wine cave.
Is a wine cave a wine cellar? Is a wine cave
yes.
a real thing, or are they just calling it that to be like hyperbolic?
No, it's like a wine.
It's like a wine cellar?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. See, that doesn't like, maybe I needed to like see how ridiculous it was, but I knew that these people held like fancy parties. So I guess it doesn't really surprise me that much.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why I'm so like weirded out that it stuck.
Wine caves
And
are
not, like-
subterranean structures for the storage and aging of wine.
So isn't that a cellar? No, a cellar.
But it's literally like carved out of a hill.
Oh, that's insane.
like a-
Okay, no, that's a lot.
Yeah.
It's not just a basement in a house.
No.
Okay, that is a lot.
Yeah.
I changed my tune. That seems like Illuminati.
I
stuff.
changed my tune.
Yeah.
It's all crazy to me. No. Being able to afford
I mean-
more than one bottle of wine at a time is insane. You
I feel
shouldn't
like
have
a
any
cellar-
influence over politics.
I feel like you have to be super wealthy to have a wine cellar, but a wine cave is a different thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've gone into some like abandoned tunnels and drank beer down there. So
the same.
Yeah.
You are the global elite,
You're the
dude.
1%.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, T-Man.
T-Man?
Testosterone man. Also, you're drinking tea.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I mean, I am a little low on tea right now. I got like a little I'm low tea.
You're low tea.
I'm a soy boy. I did a soy face.
What's a soy face?
It's like the open mouth smile that like
Oh, yeah.
that's soy face. Yeah. It's like there's a lot of good right-wing
Dude,
memes.
I got really into the
And soy
Groyper
face.
stuff because of TrueAnon.
Uh-huh.
Oh man, have you ever gotten into Groyper stuff on Twitter? Like,
I don't really get Groyper's just like ugly.
it's like
What's
a
the
base.
old frog one?
There's
You're like doing it right now. You're like
but not just the visual of it, but
Yeah.
like the whole what it is. Like the internet doesn't make sense to me, but like it starts to for a second, and then I'm like, no one's ever explained this. You just sort of are supposed to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the guy who was explaining the Groyper stuff, like you just kind of get that like if someone does a you Groyper, it's not like a Liz Fransak Groyper. That does exist, I think.
that's awesome.
And there's other leftist Groypers that are like sort of, I guess, apolitical because it's like a based
Wait,
version.
what is it though? It's just I
It's
thought
like
it was
a
just
character-
like ugly Pepe.
It is, but it's like there's different Groypers for like there's different people who make different Groypers. And then there's also people that make Groypers of known figures that
It
it's
sounds like something that would grow on your skin.
right. It's like
something that you would have to pop.
It is. I mean, Pepe is ugly, but it is.
No, I mean
Pepe.
like a Goiper.
I know.
It just sounds
It
like,
sounds like a goy. What was that called? There is something that sounds like that. A goiger or something like that. That's
Oh.
a real thing.
Yeah, it's
oh,
not
what?
like it's not a bunion. I think it grows on feet.
Oh,
right?
goiter.
A
Goiter, yeah.
No, but it's like I don't quite understand what it is, but it's fascinating to try to learn. Like there's a big naturals Groyper that just like posts. It just like has it's like a creepy Pepe face, but like different.
But
And
with
it
like
just,
big boobs.
No, and it posts pictures of women with huge boobs, and he calls them tit cows, and he like rates them, and he does that all day. And then I just like went on and found different Groypers, and it's like really creepy stuff. A lot of them just say the N word all the time. A lot of them are right wing. A lot of them are like sort of apolitical, and a lot of them are left wing ish. Like it kind of overlaps with like the Bronze Age. Anyway, there's like a lot of weird leftist
No, keep
online
going.
stuff that I learned about. Did you listen to that episode of TrueAnon?
I did. I
Groyper
barely
guy?
understood it though.
Okay, so I was at the doctor's office while I was listening to it. So I was like, while I was listening to it, I was looking this stuff up online, and I looked up the guy that that they were interviewing, M. Crumps, I think, and he sounds like he's 9 years old. I think he might be 16, but he has a really interesting Twitter because he's like, I don't know. I'd have to. Here we go. I would just say follow this guy if you want to understand it, because he's sort of an expert on all this like weird internet culture stuff, and he's part of it. But let's see. I'm trying to think of a good example of like something that explains it. I mean, I'm just waiting for Tim, but it's really interesting.
What you tell me you don't want to do our coverage of Trump's impeachment?
Huh? Oh no, that's okay.
What'd you think? What do you think?
I don't care.
What do you think?
Yeah, how the fuck does anyone give a shit about that?
I don't think it's gonna get removed.
The weakest fucking. It's not gonna happen.
Literally, the only thing that could happen is it backfires. It like fires up his base.
I get how people are like, but the principle of it. But it's like everything he's ever done.
But every Republican is
bad.
so fucking bad that like I actually am sort of at the point where I'm not sure. Like, I'm not sure if we can. I think it'd be so bad to go back to like a respectable evil racist. You know,
I think
Buttigieg. I think it's better to have a Trump if we're gonna have a Republican. I'm glad it is a Trump.
I almost didn't even notice you lumping like Buttigieg in with respectable Republicans because like it just made so much sense to me that I was like, wait, oh yeah, he made a joke. That's like, some people don't think of him as like the CIA candidate,
right? Yeah.
I think it goes back to the shit we keep saying like all the time on this podcast that like the Constitution is stupid, law itself is dumb. Like, who gives a fuck if there's precedent or not for him to get like kicked out? He shouldn't be.
He should never have been the president.
Yeah, he shouldn't be. Like, if there's a real way to get him out of there, great. But there's absolutely not. And the people who are trying to do it aren't actually trying to do it.
And I mean, it's obvious and everyone keeps saying it, but I think Pence would be worse. Like, I think that having someone in there, God, and I've heard people that like I assumed sort of understood that everyone was a fucking liar and that they're all just as vile as Trump. He's just saying it and people are like, no, that's worse because
he's not even as bad as George Bush. Like George Bush was worse.
Okay, but
he's definitely done less war crimes.
It just depends what you think. It depends on if you think that, and I think it's a valid argument, that like people being more virulently, openly racist now, which they are more openly. Like, it depends on if
his
you think,
movement and like what he's done.
Yeah,
he's more vile.
Yeah,
publicly than
and
Bush,
people are like, that's putting people in fucking danger because now people want to hate crime people, and they used to hide that shit and just discriminate.
But
against
also,
them
like
quietly.
millions of people have died because of Bush.
Because exactly, but it's like I completely understand the argument that like he's already going to kill millions of people in war, but he's worse than the other ones because he is a right-wing white supremacist, you know, fascist who, so like totally understand that argument. I just think that those people have always been this harmful and it just looks worse. And I think it fucking sucks that these people feel like they can harass people and do this shit more openly, but I feel like it's always happened. And I mean, I feel like...
But you don't like the like sneaky, quiet Pence.
I think it might be worse.
Yeah.
I think it might be worse. I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah.
So, I mean, Susanna's big on like the like principle of the thing, and I think that there's like this false dichotomy in the discourse where it's like we either impeach him or we do nothing. Like, what about like a fucking what's it called when Congress issues a statement? Like they all just it doesn't like a resolution kind of thing. They could just be like, we're gonna let the American people decide what they think of this dude. We think he sucks. He clearly did this highly illegal thing, but like I mean, then they could couch it like for the sake of the unity of the country or whatever, and like they would have publicly shamed the guy, which is basically what they're doing now, but like with less. I just feel like it's so fucking stupid to stir the pot right now.
I agree.
It's so funny that what they went hard on too is like the thing that
hard on
that absolutely incriminates Joe Biden.
Yeah.
As much.
Fucking God.
Like so stupid. he's the guy they're talking about. Like, how can you even mention this story without being like, but Joe Biden did put his crackhead son in charge of like weapons deals in Ukraine with no experience of doing that. Like, it's bad. It's not good that he did that.
Well, luckily there's no way Joe Biden gets the nomination. Just there's no fucking way.
Good.
No, he might.
I really don't.
Dude,
think
it's him or Bernie. Who else has honestly got a shot at this point?
No, I'm just kidding.
The betting markets think Warren over Biden
dude.
right now. What's that?
Yang.
Yeah, I actually have converted to the Yang Gang because I want an Xbox. I want two Xboxes.
Dude, one of the biggest surprises for me, like so far in this election cycle, is that I started out hating that guy, and now I think he's hilarious and kind of like him. I think he's like way wrong about a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, he like his freedom dividend.
dude, he's so funny.
His freedom dividend is partially funded by cuts to welfare, so it is exactly like cuts to the welfare state. Which so he is exactly what we thought he was.
Yeah.
Which is
Right.
like trying to replace the welfare state with $1,000.
But just personally, he's hilarious,
Yeah.
and I think he thinks he's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And also, not that many people are talking about like how insane tech is going to like
A lot of
reshape
people-
society, and at least he's being like, guys, robots, be careful because like all your jobs are going to be robot
Right.
jobs.
Right.
Which sounds nuts, but I think like we need that like weird like Yang 2020 canary in the coal mine to like start thinking about these things.
Yeah.
I don't like the Yang canary in the coal mine.
Dude, when he was like,
I don't think it's that racist.
hey man, I know a lot of doctors because I'm Asian.
it's-
One of the best things that
Dude,
happened.
I mean, there's a really good article about in Current Affairs recently about like Andrew Yang and his interactions with the model minority myth, and I think it's like pretty persuasive. But it is funny to be. It's good to be funny.
It's persuasive on what?
Oh, basically that like it like very succinctly makes the very old argument that and true argument that like Asians being held up as this model minority is like a pillar of white supremacy, right?
Yeah.
And his participation in it, and he really is kind of doing it. He's like addressing white people when he says that shit, and like it's not good.
No, yeah, that's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It's bad to do that. So
Do either of you listen to
show.
Useful Idiots?
Mm-mm.
It's Katie Halper and Matt Taibbi have a
Okay.
podcast. It's very good, but they did a like hour-long interview with Yang, and I don't know. He came off a lot better than I expected.
I don't think.
And
he's
like talking
evil.
to like two leftists, or like one
Right.
leftist and one Matt Taibbi,
One
who's
lib.
very cool.
Yeah.
Who's Matt Taibbi?
He's not a lib. He's
No?
definitely not. I think he just tries to stay away from like endorsements and things in a way that's like, I don't know. He's a journalist,
Yeah.
but Matt Taibbi kicks ass.
Cleaning my nails with the wine, whatever. What's this foil? Foil.
Furl.
You have sensitive nails, but
They're dirty.
cutting them with metal is not.
I'm not cutting them. I'm getting underneath them.
I don't clean my fingernails, so I don't know what it feels
You
like.
do have dirty fingernails. So does Jeff all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
me
I just
see.
don't. They clean themselves when I shower mysteriously.
Yeah, and
Does
when I
it-
do dishes.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
well, I use gloves.
They
Maybe
also
that's my
get way
problem.
dirtier when you have fake nails.
Mine are pretty fine, right? What do you think?
Yeah, you always have clean nails.
Yeah,
Do you do dishes every time you work?
Uh-huh.
no, that'll do it.
Yeah.
I also keep them pretty short. I think partially as a reaction to my dad having like nasty, disgusting, long ass fingers.
Does he play
'cause-
classical
'cause
guitar?
He plays guitar.
Not classical, but he like finger picks.
Ah,
Is Tim not coming?
I mean, he's probably waiting for the fucking train.
Yeah. Forget how long everything takes in New York. I was talking to Julie about this. She was
Does
like,
he live in New York?
Mhm.
Okay.
she was like, I don't know if I should go to this open mic tonight. And we were talking about how I was like, every time someone is debating whether or not they should go out in New York, they're always like, I could go to this open mic, but it's going to take me 17 hours to get there. So make it back by Wednesday. Like, it's like always
yeah.
such a big commitment.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I would never go to open mics because it's like you have to plan 2.5 hours sometimes around like travel.
Right.
And I'm like, fuck that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I would never leave my apartment. Once I got home after work, I would never leave until I had to go to work again.
Yeah, yeah, it seems shitty. I always have to.
Yeah, but you don't want to be at your apartment because it's like infested with rats and there's 6 other people there.
I mean, yeah.
New York sucks, dude.
No, I know.
What's good about New York is
I
that
don't know.
you
A lot
go
of people
do
I
stuff.
know. A lot of people I know have nice places in New York. They just spend like $1,000 to share. Like they'll have like their own room in a nice apartment. They just spend $1,000 for a room that they're splitting an apartment. You know, in
Yeah.
a split apartment. Or $800. I feel like $800 is like reasonable rent to have 2 roommates in New York, which is insane to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I always have to pee when I'm waiting for the train. That's the worst part about New York to me is having to pee all the time. And then like, where do you pee?
Yeah.
Pee on the 3rd rail. Kill myself.
Damn.
End it.
You can pee on it.
Can you?
Yeah.
Pee on what?
The 3rd rail.
The 3rd rail.
What are y'all talking
The
about?
electrified rail that powers the trains.
Oh, so the piss would get electrified and go back up your body? That's not how it works.
That's not how it works.
If you come
Y'all
on
are
it
just
though,
kidding.
then your dick falls off. That's how that works.
No, if you come on it, just babies just appear and then they get electrocuted and die.
My niece is really the cutest baby.
That's fine. That's a fine baby.
Are you kidding me?
That baby's fine.
She's way cuter than most babies.
She looks like a in that picture that you
She's
just showed
tiny.
me.
She's in like the first percentile for height.
She looks like a baby from Whoville with those teeth at the
Yeah.
bottom. Yeah.
She's an
Sometimes
above
babies-
average baby.
Sometimes babies' faces look like the Grinch.
Yeah,
You know.
like right there.
She has very big cheeks.
She's very cute.
My friend's baby. My friend's like 5'2", and her baby is also came out of her body at 5'2" somehow. It's just like the biggest fucking baby I've ever seen in my life. And he's got cheeks that literally sag,
Droop.
because they're so big.
No, Evangeline also her temperament. Look at her playing her piano with her knee. That's amazing.
Dude, that's some bebop shit right there.
That's very cute. Okay, no one cares.
Oh yeah, I've seen this kid. This is a cute kid.
She's a very cute kid. And her brother was also very cute, but I like her better.
Did you see that tweet that it was like a picture of somebody dressed up as Santa and it said Christmas canceled because of abortion?
Yes, and he looked really angry. He was just
Yeah, that is a pissed off Santa, man.
it doesn't even make sense.
No, it
it
doesn't.
does make sense.
It does not. We read his book, except for MD.
Except for me.
Yeah.
Are we going to tell him that? No, I'm not going to tell him I didn't read the book.
You're gonna.
No,
of course
yeah,
you are.
Yeah. Have you ever had something in your head that didn't come out of your face? Even once. The funny thing is that you have a filter. It just doesn't work.
It just doesn't work. I'm like, I know this is wrong.
You
What
have it
am I saying?
configured like a normal person where you're like, yeah. You're like, as you're saying it.
Yeah, I did
Sometimes
that.
afterwards. But
I did that during Beefin'. I did a racist joke, and I was like, "This is racist," but and then I just did it anyway.
What was it?
It was a bad round. I called Scary Spice Shaniqua Twain because she was wearing a Shania Twain. It looked just like an outfit Shania Twain wore, and it was a stupid round because the
Yeah.
Spice Girls are sort of universally loved, and they're not that funny. And
Yeah.
so Lane had us roast each Spice Girl. So I didn't have good. The only good one I had was that Sporty looked like she would have been a horse girl, or I was like, she has horse girl energy, but her parents weren't rich enough, so she just led dog fights or something like that. She does look like that though.
yeah.
She looked very trashy. British.
We're very both like. I feel like your
You guys didn't
mustache
notice.
just slowly
I changed my face.
climbs your face.
Wait, yeah, your mustache. What did you do?
Now it's more of a me mustache.
Yeah.
It used to be more.
It used to be like a
more
Frank
Fu
Zappa.
No,
Manchu.
that's not it. That's not what I changed.
You had a beard.
No.
No, what happened?
Did you get your eyebrows threaded? What?
No, I got rid of the little soul.
Oh yeah, it's I like it.
I always
You look good.
in my head I always imagine you as that one picture of you that people always use on show posters that is not what you actually look like.
Oh,
when you have
yeah.
the Fu Manchu.
Yeah.
What? I don't know what that is.
Go through your tags.
You're not wearing sleeves. This won't narrow it down. You're not wearing sleeves, and you have a Fu Manchu in like one of your like headshots that people put on posters and shit. Yeah. I wish I could. I know we've talked about this photo shoot a million times on the podcast, but I wish I could dig those photos up because I think they're in an inbox somewhere and use them as my headshot. Where it's like,
Wait, what photo shoot?
oh, the t-shirt company. We talked about it.
Oh yes, that's so good.
Yeah.
If for new listeners, Michael was asked to be a model
Oh yeah.
and he was too ugly.
What's up? Hello. We can hear you. We cannot see you. Let me turn you up a little bit. Oh,
Hey.
hell yeah, dude.
Excellent.
What's
Hi,
going
y'all.
on, man? How was Uncut Gems?
Dude, it was good.
Don't spoil it, because I'd want to see it.
I won't spoil it. I liked it a lot after I saw it, and the more I thought about it, the more I liked it.
Hell yeah.
Stressful as hell, though. Super stressful.
Do you agree that Adam Sandler looks hot in it?
No, I don't agree with that.
Yeah. Some people there's like a contingent on Twitter that's just like real daddy energy kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would probably.
I was a little kid when Kevin Garnett was playing for the Timberwolves, and I loved Adam Sandler. So this movie is like ripped from my childhood. I'm excited to see it.
Kevin Garnett does a good job. He's a pretty good actor.
That athletes turning out to be good actors is a thing. That is
he's
very
playing
strange.
himself though, right?
Yeah, Kevin Garnett plays Kevin Garnett.
But I think the movie is fictional, therefore he is enacting a script.
Yeah.
Yes.
He has to deliver lines.
I think that's actually probably harder, is like delivering lines as yourself.
Yeah.
Than like as someone else, because you can't be like, what the fuck do it with an accent or whatever. Thanks for coming on the show, man.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry it took so long,
Oh,
but I really appreciate it.
You're a busy man.
I'm hard to nail down sometimes.
Just like Jesus.
That's right.
So, have you had the opportunity to comment on the Addie Barkin endorsement?
I think he's allowed to endorse what he wants to endorse.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. But, like, do you feel...
Michael coming in hot with the gotchas. Also, we didn't introduce Tim yet. This is Tim Faust, everybody.
Tim Faust, he has a book, Health Justice Now. I didn't mean that as like a gotcha. I think I'm a little bit fired up about the Addie Barkin thing, even though it was literally a month ago, because I just listened to an episode of The Brunigs where he talks about, like, basically, where Matt Brody talks about his critique of that specific endorsement, which was basically like... Addie had like put out an article like 2 weeks earlier that was like the public option's dumb. Like we're never gonna like we need a mass mobilization and no one's gonna come out for the fucking public option. They're gonna come out for Medicare for all or whatever. And then Elizabeth Warren's like, yeah, actually we're gonna do the public option first. And suddenly he's like, oh yeah, that is we will do that. Anyway, yeah. But
Totally fair. I don't know what he's thinking. I think he is a true blue single payer guy. I mean, his life is living in balance. He does come from a background of working, within the system, so to speak. And so I understand why he might be in favor of Warren's model. I disagree, but I'm not going to, for a bunch of reasons, like shit talk dudes. Not that you're asking me to,
no.
But I don't think he's correct.
So,
but I think he's.
What is your beef with
opposed to Sanders' model at all?
What's your beef with the public option?
It doesn't work. Public option is an attempt to keep profitable companies profitable in the hopes that we can someday squeeze them out. But look at student loans, for example. You've got a public option student loans, and that doesn't. What happens is that every time there is a threat to private loan givers or private lending, folks make sure that student loans aren't large enough or low enough or cheap enough that folks can use them to avoid taking out private loans. You weaken the public option to a point where it becomes like not a threat to private interests. I think the same thing would happen with a single payer. It kind of puts also doesn't really solve any of the problems, right? Like the problems in American healthcare happen because we have so many insurers and we can't use their combined strength to bring down medical costs or guarantee coverage for people. So the public option is like at best a short-term band-aid in the problem, nothing more. So why go to all the hassle of fighting the fight to build one of these things that can't solve the problem and then hope that people like it for a couple of years and that you'll have the capital to pass single payer? I don't see that as being feasible. No one is going to be amped to have slightly less bad insurance.
And it seems like, there's already in some very specific cases, like there is like public insurance that exists against the landscape of private insurance. And there's a bunch of hospitals or providers, whatever, that don't take Medicaid. So there's already an example of it not working.
Right. It's a little bit different in that. So the reason we have one of the reasons that Medicare and Medicaid are permitted to exist is that old folks and poor folks are the hardest people to insure. They're really expensive in general. And so no private insurance plan wants to insure them. And so so long as Medicare can exist to kind of take on the more costly people to insure, private plans are totally cool with that. A public option is, and the reason Medicaid reimbursements are low is because Medicaid is a combined federal and state model. And so states have, lower budgets. They can't print money. They can't do the same things that federal government can do. So they feel the pinch of state budgets and cause expenditures. And so they try to clamp down reimbursement rates. And also, it's dealing with poor people, so who cares?
And sometimes they just straight up don't want to.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
It's a thing they're required to do because they take the federal money, but they're not trying to actually take care of poor people. That's why you have things like requirements and other obstacles that get in the way of getting your insurance.
I was actually hoping to ask you at some point, like, about specifically, like, how work requirements work within, like, Medicaid, and how that could, or I guess in theory, that could be used for good, but it's, like, exploited in other ways.
I don't think they could be used for good. Work requirements are the idea that there's some kernel of people who receive welfare or benefits or Medicaid or whatever who don't deserve it, the undeserving poor, right? And we want to sift the so-called deserving poor from the so-called undeserving poor. And this idea of that some poor folks are deserving and some poor folks aren't is literally rooted in the eugenics movement from the late 1800s, right? Social Darwinism. It comes from this this British guy whose name I forgot, who wanted to figure out how to best spend British crowns or whatever to take care of the poor masses, and reckoned that because Indian people were so like genetically inferior to white British people, that any money you spent on their betterment would be wasted and should be spent instead on white people, on Brits. That's literally where the idea like using welfare to discern between the deserving and undeserving comes from the eugenics movement. And we kind of see it's used as like a not even a dog whistle, like a full-on air horn these days to signal that black folks, brown people, immigrants, poor people, like are getting away with it. There's this idea that your insurance is bad, you're on the rocks, but these poor people, these black people, are getting away with it. They're getting free state insurance while you're being screwed over. So be mad. It's used as like a method to divide and conquer basically the electorate.
I think I might have asked that a little wrong on my part. I guess there are ways that some states think they can like funnel money into like more specific uses for Medicaid, but they end up just like excluding people. If I'm correct.
So states. So there's a good way and a bad way to get money for experiments in Medicaid. The good way to do it, you could say, is to file a request from. There's like the waiver program, which is an idea that the state asks the federal government, hey, we want to use money to, for example, use money to target mothers or pregnant people or whatever who are battling substance use. We want to build programs that shovel them into like social work and those kinds of good programs. But they within budget, because Medicaid's really tightly regulated, what to spend money on. Please give us a waiver so we can spend money on this project. As long as they can prove that they'll get better results and not deny anyone coverage, and they could like argue that this is a real thing, this experiment will work, they can get a waiver. And so what we're seeing now is that work requirements are being used like in a waiver process. They're saying this will help us save money and guarantee that folks get care, but they're lying. This experiment's been proven false over and over and over and over and over again. Nobody's under any like preconceived notion that work requirements make a difference in the positive. They're just used to target and harass people who are, by and large, already working. Everybody who's on Medicaid is already working if they're capable of doing so. There's very few exceptions, and even if there were, who gives a shit? Like the real Medicaid, Medicare fraud that happens is happening on the provider level, the hospital level, physician level, special level, that kind of thing. And so work requirements, they kind of have like, they're ostensibly, we want to make sure that no like people are getting away with it, living high on the hog, getting Medicaid, and sitting at home not working or whatever, which is of course like not a thing that happens. But if you wanted to implement it, we know that the cost of implementing this process costs more than the perceived savings, right? In Tennessee, work requirements cost more than how much the savings on Medicaid is, right? Like they have to spend a lot of money building up offices and staffing those offices. And of course they understaff them. So folks wait in line for hours and hours and hours, which is time they can't spend going to work. In Tennessee, it got so bad, they didn't have a centralized database of Medicaid recipients. It was literally like 3 computers, you're jumping between them, a lot of paperwork, just a very horseshit process, which is like very nakedly horseshit. They're underfunding this requirements process to just cajole and harass folks into not spending Medicaid, which in theory saves money. It's a pretty rotten process to take.
1 second. Can you talk a little bit about the sort of, over the past couple of days, I read your book, and the one thing that I couldn't really wrap my head around was the mechanism that drives up prices year after year, like healthcare costs year after year. And can you talk a little bit about how, like, why it's inevitable that will continue to happen? under the current
so
model?
there's a good reason and a bad reason that medical costs go up every year. Medical costs have gone up every year since we first began recording medical costs. It happens faster than inflation, and the difference is like how much larger than inflation do medical costs rise. Some countries keep it. Every country is feeling the burn on medical costs. In the OECD, this is always a big question: how do you contain costs? The reason medical costs go up in like very, very vague terms, independent of the bad structural problems, is that more folks are living longer with treatable conditions, right? Things like diabetes or heart failure or emphysema or whatever aren't the death sentences they were even 2 generations ago, right? So more folks are living longer with chronic conditions, and they spend more money to take care of them. Also, you have new therapies, new treatments, like that. That's like a pretty good reason for costs to go up. It'll keep escalating as boomers get older, right? And now the things that killed boomers' parents aren't going to kill boomers, but they're going to keep getting sick and be unhealthy, which is fine, and we'll spend more money paying for it. Okay, that's like a good way to spend money. Like medical costs, medical spending on a whole isn't a bad way to spend money. We got all this money, we got to spend it somehow. Medical spending is high return. I think for every buck you put into healthcare spending, it generates 6x as far as like people's salaries, income, return back to the community, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, keeping people alive is pretty good for the labor force.
Right. It's like a good way to spend money, much better than bombs or eternal war or bailouts of banks or whatever. This is a good way to spend money. But that's not the reason costs go up so dramatically in the U.S. compared to other countries. It's because large provider groups, now here I mean like corporations, hospital corporations, pharma companies. Martin Shkreli is a great example. The private equity firms that own them understand that you can jack up costs whenever you want, however you want, and nobody can really stop it. This is not like a normal good.
Just to pause you for a second, I feel like it's so good for the public to have a name to like a pharma ghoul. Like for some reason, Martin Shkreli was just such like an intention-loving like dipshit that now we have like a touchstone to like, oh yeah, that kind of jackal.
I mean, he could also function as like a bit of a like scapegoat, where it's like a kind of a distraction from the more structural, right? Like it's just
kind of like the same thing that happened with like Bernie Madoff, where it's like, yeah, he's a finance, goblin,
right?
And then like people, they're like, oh yeah, but he went to jail. Not like this is like a systemic thing. Right. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted. Keep going.
No, I agree. Martin Shkreli's greatest service to humanity was offering a great example of the model of how pharma works and where costs come from, and that prices in the U.S. are basically fake.
Right.
I think in the book I have the example of MRI machines, MRI machine. It's not like an ATM machine. I'm not using the acronym the wrong way.
MRI imaging machine.
Yeah, MRI imaging machine. MRIs cost 5 times more here. A scan costs 5 times more here than it costs in Australia, even with the same machine doing the same procedure. In DC, a survey of MRIs found a 9-fold cost variance, even with the same machine in the same hospital, scanning the same scan, based upon things like who was paying for it, what time of day it was, what doctor was doing the scan, like all these things. Even though it's like literally the same machine, it's like a copier. You push one button, you get the same result out. All these things that influence the prices are totally arbitrary, and so therefore costs skyrocket, and you have this big thing happening structurally. So you've got providers that do rotten things, you've got pharma companies that do rotten things. The real big worm here is private equity companies. Private equity companies buy up hospital corporations, buy up rural hospitals, shut rural hospitals down, which leads to greater costs long term because folks can't go to a local hospital. They got to get super sick and schlep an hour to like a big ER and spend a lot more money there. Like all these things kind of congeal into a force that drives up a lot of prices. And you've got like, I don't want to blame individual doctors. It's not the right way to do it, but you do have like bad apples here and there that can really jack up costs too, right? A good example is anesthesiologists in Texas who, or in Nevada, for example, who will refuse systematically to join insurance plans. They claim they're not being reimbursed enough. And so therefore, you go get surgery, your doctor, your anesthesiologist is out of network. They send you a huge bill afterward because your insurance doesn't cover it. And then they reap whatever you pay them, or you go into debt and someone puts the bill.
I would like to have my open heart surgery just wide awake.
That's right.
Yeah.
I want to feel every inch of it, right? I want to.
I mean, you're like a metal dude or whatever. Like, yeah, into like wrestling and hardcore shit.
Give me a piece of cork to bite into, and that's how I get my heart surgery. So costs go up for a bunch of reasons, right? And
there was
the reason. Oh, sorry.
There was something. It's the one like pull quote I like took notes on from your book that I wanted to just read back to you. I don't even remember exactly what the context of it was, but I feel like it kind of cuts through it cuts into and through so many parts of the book and like so much of our healthcare system. And it was that an underlying principle of healthcare costs is that all prices are fake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Could you just speak to that for a little bit?
Well, MRI is a great example, right? Like there is no reason that MRI needs to have a 9-fold cost variance. One of the reasons costs are so high is because prices are high. That's like a famous truism. I think it was Ewa Reinhardt, who's this famous health economist, put forward. Costs are high because prices are high. And prices are high for arbitrary reasons.
Right.
Prices are high because you can make them high. Because nobody if you're a big hospital corporation or equipment manufacturer or a pharma company or whatever, insurance companies need you way more than you need insurance companies, right? There's a totally asymmetrical negotiation going on. If I'm an insurance company and you're a hospital and you say heart transplant costs $400,000, I can't really walk away from that because I can't not cover heart transplants. And there's 5 insurance companies in our city or whatever. You don't need to play on my level. All I can do is agree to your prices, try to bring it down a little bit by saying, maybe $300,000, and we'll include these doctors in our network, that kind of thing. But the negotiation is tilted in favor of hospital corporations. So they can kind of invent their own prices. You've got hospitals that, and it's more like corporate level, not at the doctor level, to be sure. They can jack up prices, set arbitrary fees. Insurance companies can't do anything about it. The insurance companies are bad, to be sure. They're rotten and should be scourged from the earth. They do nothing good, but they're also incompetent. They can't bring down the prices, so what they do is shove costs back onto you. That's why your copays and your premiums and your deductibles go up every single year because they can't handle rising costs. So they just hope they can kind of use you as arbitrage, make you pay for it, try to teach you to go to the ER, to go to urgent care instead of the ER, but ultimately you pay the bill. They don't have to deal. They don't have to deal with that much.
There's a maybe one sentence aside. I think you only mention it once, and it's just this quick reference to an example of price fixing. Is price fixing as I feel like there are so few insurers in a given market generally that it's very, very easy for them to establish a floor below which they will not lower their prices, and it's not dictated by finances at all. Do you think that it is a big contributing factor to rising costs?
So the can's cut out in the middle of that. You talk about price fixing?
Price fixing, yeah. Do you think it's rampant, or do you think it's, yeah?
I don't think it's rampant, but I'm an optimist. Mm-hmm. The case of price fixing was pretty specific. I think Ryan Cooper found this at The Nation. So insurance companies on the ACA get subsidies from the federal government to enroll folks in their plans. The federal government says if you're making $17,000 a year or whatever, your premiums should represent 2% or whatever. This is a totally made up number of your income. So therefore, we will cover the rest between 2% of your income and whatever your premiums cost. And that subsidy is based upon what the second cheapest silver plan is in a given market. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, what Ryan Cooper found is that in markets with only 2 or 3 insurers, the second cheapest silver, you'd have one very cheap silver option from some insurer, but then the second tier one will be pretty consistent across all 3 insurers, which might indicate that they were collaborating on what to set that at, because that guarantees they get maximum subsidy from the federal government when they're running those insurance plans.
Right.
No formal allegation I don't think was ever made. It has been proven, but it certainly acts as if there was a price fix going on there, and they're just milking the government for the most subsidy they can get.
Let's talk. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all.
I was going to say. Go ahead.
Sorry, no, go ahead for real.
Okay, I wanted to stick with the topic of subsidy because it's just the bread and butter of the neoliberal approach to this phenomenon. Can you talk a little bit about upcharting? That was one of the most interesting sections of the book for me. It was
oh, sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Medicare has 4 parts. The 3 good ones are, so first off, Medicare was designed a very long time ago when folks were dying at age 68, 69,
Right.
nice, 70. So a Medicare was not supposed to be like a very, very long-term insurer, right?
Mm-hmm.
You'd have it for like a couple of years.
Right.
You'd get off it. You die. Medicare would cover the end of your life. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
So Medicare Part A, original Medicare, just covered like emergency room costs for that heart attack, for your whatever, for your COPD, for your long, like for your urgent critical needs.
For your death.
But
yeah.
over time, people began living longer and began getting, and I'm dramatically oversimplifying, but you get it.
Yeah.
More and more like long-term chronic conditions. So Medicare Part B was developed, which is non-emergency room costs. This is your traditional kind of insurance model, which is why Medicare Part B, you got to spend money on in premiums. Medicare Part D is drugs, because again, drugs weren't nearly as big and profound as they were in the 60s design. Medicare Part C, however, is Medicare Advantage. And you might notice that Medicare A, B, and D all have costs. They all have holes. Medicare Part B has no out-of-pocket max. You're spending 20% on all your medical costs. It can get really, really pricey if you're a sick person pretty quickly, or if you're a person who you can get pretty pricey pretty quickly. So in the 90s, we introduced the idea of private Medicare, Medicare Part C, aka Medicare Advantage, in which an insurer will make a bet with the federal government on a given person and say, we think this person's going to cost $5,000 to insure this year. So pay us $5,000. We will guarantee this level of coverage or whatever. And whatever delta there is our profit or our loss, so on and so forth. But if it turns out that person is much sicker than the estimate, the initial term was, the federal government kind of foots the bill and gives you a payment. Like if it turns out if at the beginning of the year, I'm the insurer and the patient, I guess, and you're the federal government, we agree that I will cost $10,000 to insure, and then it's discovered that I have something like I've got brain cancer or a kidney disease or whatever, the federal government will give me like a subsidy to help compensate for that big loss from that disease condition that I have. And so that's where upcharging comes in. Medicare Advantage is rotten for a bunch of reasons. Medicare Advantage is allowed to do things that Medicare Part A, B, and D can't do. Medicare Advantage can do things like not give people co-insurance or not have co-pays. It can do things like give you like a Fitbit or a Lyft ride to the hospital or whatever that Medicare normal can't do. And in exchange, it has things like provider networks, HMO structures, the kinds of things that get in your way of using insurance in the first place.
Wait,
So
what
you
about a
still-
Fitbit?
It'll like Medicare Advantage might give you a Fitbit, like a little gizmo,
Oh,
a little
okay.
trinket, or like a.
But it's not. So you're saying it's not like meaningful, and it'll get you a lift. So there's official healthcare that pays for a lift. to
MD's
the
like,
hospital?
I might get this Medicare Advantage.
No, I'm
thing."
just curious. I mean,
Lyft and Uber have pretty massive Medicare Advantage departments.
Oh,
'Cause
wow.
An ambulance costs $800.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If you don't need an ambulance, why not take an Uber or whatever?
right? Why not
So
make
Medicare-
some guy who's driving for 12 hours have a dying person in his car?
Mm.
Yeah.
Right. Well, also like some things you don't need to go to the ER for, but there's no urgent care around you. There's nowhere else to go.
Right.
So like either you're taking an ambulance for like a broken arm, which is important but not like critical,
Right.
or like you fell down, hurt your hip or whatever, or you can take a lift.
Oh, okay.
What are you
an
telling me? You
ambulance,
can't ride a
you're-
bike with a broken arm? Come on.
It's like if you had care closer to you and ambulances were cheaper, this wouldn't be a problem. But for some folks, this thing like makes sense.
Right.
And for insurance company or for Medicare Advantage providers, like this is a thing which makes sense to them. But they're allowed to do this, and Medicare Advantage is not.
Yeah.
Medicare proper is not. So they got all these little things they could do. Generally, what happens is folks who aren't very sick get Medicare Advantage because they don't want to deal with the bullshit of parts A, B, and D, which is totally fair choice. But once you get sick and you have specialists you want to see, you have a cancer doctor you want to see, and they're not in the Advantage network, or you want to go to the HMO, people turn off and go into traditional Medicare and then buy it's called Medigap plans, which cover the copays that you otherwise pay. It's a pretty it's a Swiss cheese model. It's clearly not good.
Right.
But the upcharting comes in. So usually towards the end of the year, Medicare Advantage wants to get as much money as it can. And often, and it gets those reimbursements based upon diagnosis codes. But often, diagnosis codes are pretty arbitrary. Medicine is both an art and a science, but there's a lot of art involved. So let's say you go in June and you've got elevated liver enzymes, but your doctor thinks not causing the problem, probably no disease here. I'm not going to give you a diagnosis of hyperkalemia. I forgot the name of the disease. I'm not going to give you a diagnosis of like liver disease or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're just going to note that and take a look at it later in the year. Medicare Advantage looks at that chart and says, I've got an idea. Why don't we have a doctor call you, ask you how your kidney is doing, look at your chart, and give you this diagnosis, even though nothing has changed. Because now all of a sudden, Medicare Advantage can say, hey, this guy's got this disease. We need $7,000 more, please. Mm-hmm. And the federal government looks at the record and says, oh, okay. So you have hospitals that specialize in upcharting. Montefiore, New York, is a good example, who will send a doctor into every patient's room and make sure they get every diagnosis they can possibly get at the end of the year, regardless of how sick that person actually is. Now, they won't necessarily, not always, invent new diagnoses, but they'll make sure everything you could get, you do get. If your blood sugar is a little high, now you've got diabetes too with a diagnosis, that kind of thing.
Right.
But sometimes they do straight up invent. So like they will add more diagnoses. Sometimes they fabricate them entirely, which is straight up fraud. And they some studies found that Advantage insurers never remove diagnoses. Once you have a diagnosis, it stays with you for life as long as they're insuring you. They'll add new ones, but they will never check up to see, oh, how's your liver doing? Oh, better take that off. That'll just ride with you the entire time you're insured. So they will find ways to tack on more sticky notes to your chart, but never take anything off.
Upcharting seems like, I'm sorry, I'll stop talking in just a second, but upcharting seems like a really good example to like, if throw in someone's face in an argument where they're like, markets are so efficient. It's like unbelievably inefficient. These like loopholes that get exploited.
Does anyone really think? Subsidy. Does anyone that you talk to about this actually think that markets are efficient and that this all makes sense, or are they just afraid of it being free?
Some folks do, and they're mostly already healthy and already wealthy. Mm-hmm. Some folks are very happy with their insurance because they don't need to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they've got money, and so they're good. And those folks, we're not going to win regardless, right? Like. I'm kind of betting on the idea that there is a large mass of people who are very unhappy with their insurance, have been dicked around for years, if not decades, and who like aspire towards something like that. But some folks out there do think that the market can solve their problems. They're usually working in the insurance industry,
or they think that it's just flawed now. Like I feel like I've never met a single person, including people with like almost right-wing views, that actually thinks that we have a good healthcare system now. They just are pointing to the wrong flaw in it. Like, but I think that, but I've never met anyone who's like, no, it makes sense that every time I pay a medical bill, I get another bill afterwards. That's like, actually, we thought it was $30, but it's $900. Oopsie doopsies. Yeah.
Even I see what you're saying now. I misunderstood.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not saying anything that requires any logic. I was just saying, and also, or it doesn't require any knowledge is what I meant. I was just saying, like, it's so frustrating to talk to people because I don't think anyone actually believes that it's currently working. They just believe that the reason it's not working is different than the reason that I believe, which is that it should be much simpler. And I should understand it because it should just be free. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've gone into medical debt just because I didn't understand it.
I have met a couple of folks who think things are working fine now because they're working fine for them. These people are freaks, just total perverts. Yeah. I gave a talk.
Bloody nonsense.
Sorry,
he said bloody nonsense in an accent.
Oh yeah,
I did.
I gave a talk in Providence last week or the week before. Time was like 5 falls on the cliff, so it's hard to follow. And one guy got up and was like, well, I think things are pretty good for me and most of my friends. I don't see why this is such a big problem. Maybe a small tweak could solve it. Which means, of course, things are working good for you and your friends because you got money. Like, fuck off, nerd.
And because you're probably young and healthy.
Okay, this brings me to something that I really wanted to talk about, which is that in your book, your hatred of nerds really comes through. Like you have more epithets for nerds in your book than like, it's like an anti-nerd screed that happens to be about healthcare. Like, you were a data scientist. Do you identify as like a recovered nerd? And like, could you talk a little bit about like what kind of nerd you hate? Like the sort of technocratic, go ahead.
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't identify as a nerd or recovering nerd.
Okay.
What shirt are you wearing? Let me see it.
I'm wearing a shirt that I bought from a dude with pub I liked.
Okay.
Of a monster who's
That's
mugging you.
sick as fuck.
That shirt
Okay.
rules.
I thought it was a cool little cartoon.
It is cool.
Wait, before you get into that,
I don't know if you're not a nerd, but I
real
don't
quick,
know.
I wanted to ask, I've seen you on your like speaking tours, like talk about health justice. You wrote a book about it. At this point, you're absolutely like an expert on this topic. That most people who speak on it are speaking like either in a lab coat or in a suit. Do you find advantages and or like disadvantages to like keeping with the like punk like aesthetic, like a Motorhead guy bandana? Like, do you find that it helps get your point across to the people you want it to, or
Are people ever crappy to you about it?
Yeah.
Benjamin like does it like barely wears sleeves to a wedding, so this is close to his
Yeah.
heart.
No, yeah, I mean like respect. But
I will admit a certain kind of pleasure in going up and giving a speech and watching the serious people in the room have to deal with the fact that I know what I'm talking about to some degree.
Right.
Even though I dress like a fucking like couch surfer, which to be fair, I am. Like I'm just doing what I am.
Yeah.
I don't know. I find it helpful, right? Because like I'm trying to talk to folks who have gone through the same shit that like my friends have gone through, right? Like I've got a lot of friends like in punk houses or musicians or whatever who like will probably die young because they can't, like people who could be doing really interesting things but can't because they need to buy insurance. They go work at a mindless job or work tech support or customer service or whatever, and kind of get ground down. With a thing I found in the past couple of years is that whenever I find a band that I like a lot, within 6 months I find a GoFundMe for someone in the band's like heart surgery. Right? Like this is like not why I care about single payer, not because of the art or whatever. Like it's impossible to take risks and do things that are interesting when your body is guaranteed to betray you and you can't afford the cost of doing it. And that sucks. I want single payer for everybody. I also want single payer for all my friends who could be doing like shitty noise bands that only 10 people care about.
Also, you wouldn't get so many like boring ass fucking famous comics who had their parents pay their way the whole time.
Yeah, there would be more opportunity for actual interesting people to make art. Yeah.
I live in Bushwick right now. The way you make art in New York is to have rich parents or you just don't eat. Like that, and that sucks. That leads to really boring derivative stuff. One of the reasons that Manchester was the best city for music bands in the 80s is because they had a lot of folks who went through art school, which was federally subsidized. That's why you have like cities in the that's why the UK won post-punk and I think won punk rock in a lot of ways is because bands went. You could go to art school subsidized, stick around, work on your music, and come out and try something. You weren't going into massive debt for it, and if you got sick, you go to the doctor. That's not why I do single payer stuff. It's just a thing that I think about when I'm on the road or finding a band that I care about. As far as like looking like a Hesher or whatever when I'm on the road, I mean like I only own one suit and I wear it twice a year. Like I'm not gonna get that thing clean.
Do you wear it for wrestling? Is that?
I do. I have 2 suits then. I have one suit for weddings, and then I have a fake snakeskin red and black suit, 3-piece.
Even better
for
you.
wrestling.
Yeah. Some people don't think
disgusting.
they need a suit for weddings, but I appreciate that you actually do have a suit for weddings.
Okay, but Michael, you asked about nerds, and then I cut you off.
Yeah, I think at one point you call them computer touchers. Like there's a real sort of anti-technocrat anger that permeates that whole book, and I'm interested in your relationship to nerdhood and why you're so mad at them. And I agree with the anger.
Or are you using nerd just as a way to be like, you fucking nerds who like your healthcare, your narcs? Or are you saying nerd I don't know. I didn't read your book. I'm the one that didn't. I'm the one out of these. Okay, so both of them read the whole thing. I didn't read any.
MD's job is to be the voice of the people.
But I listened to you on TrueAnon. So I was like, that's enough.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you got the gist.
Yeah.
The book's long anyway. I've forgotten everything I wrote down. I need
No, you have recited some of it verbatim so far on this. Yeah. But keep going.
I'm glad that I'm consistent.
Yeah. You still got it.
So I lived in San Francisco for a long time. My favorite city in the U.S.
Still?
Oh, 100%.
Damn.
Like,
All right.
you can't ruin the hills.
All right.
They're trying, but you can't ruin how beautiful that city is.
Yeah.
It's overwhelmed. Whenever I go back, I'm just totally overwhelmed with the raw beauty of that city and the whole area. It's got 3 distinct biomes within 25 radial miles. You can find there's kinds of ants no one has discovered yet up in North Bay. It is.
Tell me more about how nerds are bad.
Go
They
on.
did it in my anti-nerd screen. There's okay. The only good app is the Exploratorium, the Science Museum's app in SF, because you can go take pictures of bugs or plants or whatever, and it'll tell you what that bug or plant is.
Yeah.
They did that
Shazam.
because-
I've been asking for a Shazam for nature for so long. I didn't realize this was a real thing.
Yeah.
And the reason they do this is because there are so many kinds of bugs and plants they haven't discovered yet or categorized yet that they use this photo archive as a database to say, oh, here's a kind of ant we don't recognize. It's like geotagged. We're gonna go there and find this ant. It's a way to it's a way of surfacing new discoveries. That's cool as hell. That's a good app.
Yeah, that's cool.
But most of the apps that I worked on or with or around totally suck. I lived in SF in the era of Google Glass, which I vehemently oppose.
I don't even know what that
it's
is.
It's possible to if you are
Like
certain-
glasses.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, they fucking suck. Some dude or some person, some lady, some tech reviewer wore them to Molotovs, a real seedy dive bar in the Lower Haight, and got not assaulted. That's the wrong term, but shoved pretty violently for wearing them. And frankly, not wrong.
That's assaulted. I think that is assaulted.
It's mostly because they were wearing the glass.
Yeah.
Right.
Refused to take it off.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's self-defense in my opinion.
Crime is a spectrum.
I'm not saying the assaulter deserved to get in trouble. I'm just saying that's assault.
Yeah, maybe it's legally assault, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm not representing them in court. But there's a certain kind of person in SF who can live
Oh, you cut out. 1 second.
the literal world around them, right?
Wait. So
There's
there's
it
some
cut
kind
out.
of person in SF, and then you cut out.
Who can interact with who can go about their life without interacting whatsoever with the world around them. They get up, they take a private bus to to Apple or Google or whatever. They
campus.
touch computer for 10 hours. They take a bus home. They do their laundry through an app. They get their food through an app. They get they get their whippets or whatever through an app. Everything is done through computers. There's no actual need to live in the world around them. That's a big bummer to me, especially in a city that is both that beautiful and that destitute.
Right.
You never need look at the world around you. And this to me is the peak of nerddom. You escape so deeply into your fantasy world that you are unable to comprehend that there are folks like you who do not exist like you or do the things that you care about who are maybe having a hard time. When you can't see the forest for the trees, so to speak. And the technocrat is a good example of this. The technocrat fetishizes process and paperwork and the ACA design and Excel sheets and models, that kind of thing. And they never consider or have to consider that most folks either can't or don't want to or aren't capable of dealing with these kinds of models. And so they fetishize this thing. In this case, it's the process, the act of determining who's worthy and who's not worthy. And they don't understand or they don't care to understand that they're actually making life or death choices for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, and they don't care to because they have they made a little Rubik's Cube and they're very proud of it and they show it off. Like a dog showing off a dead bird or whatever.
And it seems so much more perverse. I feel like this mindset and this model is only bad for society. But when it's applied to the idea of keeping people alive and keeping people healthy, it's so much more violent in a disgustingly hidden way. I heard you in your talk say something that stuck with me. I might mess it up a little bit, but you described human bodies as unknowable sacks of goo, right? And it's
That was a tweet that I saw in 2012 that has stuck with me. It was David Thorpe. Stuck with me the entire time, the past 7 years.
It's amazing. It stuck with me too. But just having that nerd, untouched mindset of spreadsheets, and then
Right. This illusion of dominion over things that you can't actually control.
when it comes to people's real decaying human bodies that exist in reality, it's violent and fucking vile that people can distance themselves in that way.
It's the hubris that you can model the universe, right? That you can, because you're so smart and so good, build a model that predicts how people interact with the world around them, or how like it's a similar problem to what we're seeing like with racial and economic prejudice and algorithms, right? Like the algorithmic designer just perpetuates their own biases,
which is so funny but so bad.
There's
it's so funny. They're like, "Oops, we forgot black people existed."
So were you on a tear there? What were you just talking about?
I'm always on or near a tear.
You seem like you're tore up, dude.
He's got hella hernias.
Yeah.
I guess before we get to, the sort of like logical conclusion of this conversation, which is like single payer.
Sorry,
and
one second. Are you guys recording or should I have been recording?
No, we're recording.
Okay, thank God.
No, man, this is not. We're just talking, man. We're not even.
We haven't even started yet.
Yeah,
I've done that before, and I don't want to do it again.
Yeah.
I appreciate you looking out, though. But yeah, I guess before we talk about like single payer and how that's different than this horrible Byzantine fucking technocratic approach to healthcare that ruins people's lives, and health justice beyond single payer in the ways that you've explained it. How did you go from like writing code in the world of healthcare to like doing this speaking tour and writing this book, and I guess like being as focused on this as you are now?
Well, I wanted to impress my girlfriend.
Did it work?
Yeah, I hope so. It's working so far. No, so I worked in the ACA enrollment process in 2014, Florida, Georgia, Texas, and that was kind of a mind fuck because those are all 3 Medicaid gap states, right? So I built a couple models to find folks who were eligible for insurance, who were probably uninsured, and we go knock on doors. The folks we would talk to would be too poor to qualify for the ACA. And that was fucked up, obviously, but I was like, oh, this does not match with my model of how a government program should work. Why would you actively disenfranchise your constituents? Why would you bank upon that? Like, why would you be able to do this? Why would this gap exist in the first place? Why would you permit it to exist?
Can you just briefly, like the Medicaid gap states were states that didn't expand Medicaid.
Right.
So if there was a space, an income space where if you made too much to qualify for Medicaid but not enough to qualify for the ACA, like that's the
exactly
gap. Right. Okay.
So Medicaid expansion came with 2 prongs. One, a uniform definition of who is qualified for Medicaid. Right now, and before the ACA, in some states you could have income requirements as low as like $700 a year, like just fucking insanely low.
Yeah.
Yep. That was Mississippi. Mississippi was like $800 or $700 per year.
Classic
qualified for
Mississippi.
Medicaid.
I feel like you can make that doing stand up, like, and nothing else. Yeah.
You're just like, I could quit my job and get health care.
No.
Yeah.
In Texas, you need to be both. You need to be both poor and blind, or disabled, and or pregnant. But if you are not 2 of those things, you don't get Medicaid.
And just for the listeners
That's like an
outside
LSAT
of Texas, there are some people in Texas that are not blind.
But I know a lot of people with Medicaid in Louisiana, so are we better than a lot of states for Medicaid?
John Bell Edwards expanded Medicaid,
But even,
immediately.
okay, so, because I felt like I knew people in like 2014 that had Medicaid, but so we were still more reasonable. Was it like...
Our unemployment program is also really is solid here.
I just always assumed Louisiana was worse. I just did not know that we were better at anything.
I was on Medicaid for about 10 months or something, and I miss it every day.
Yeah?
I pay like $700 a month in healthcare
Yeah, my
expenses
friend-
right now.
yeah.
And I'm one of the lucky ones.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
It really ran a pretty big range, right?
Right.
In some states like Colorado and California that had great Medicaid programs, so to speak, and then Mississippi and Texas, which had the worst. And ACA mandated that if you wanted to receive a big chunk of federal money, you had to do 2 things. One, you had to expand Medicaid to all folks making under 120% of the federal poverty line, or about $13,000. And you had to make a more uniform model of who gets Medicaid. No longer can you limit it to just like poor, disabled. It has to be everybody. It's income based only. And if you receive the federal money, and like the federal government would cover the cost of that expansion for 8 years, something like that, until 2020, something like that. And if you received that money, you had to play by those rules. And some states decided not to do this for purely political reasons. There's no good reason not to. It's free money. It has a major impact on life expectancy, major impact on the labor market. Clearly a good choice, but Obama didn't think that Republicans would hate him enough to refuse free money.
That's the story of his entire administration. He's like, they wouldn't do that, and then they do it. Yeah.
Part of it is also that nobody thought you could get away with that. They thought that Medicaid expansion was like a guarantee, like was going
to be real popular.
Legal, that you could mandate it.
Oh, okay.
There's a big lawsuit, Sebelius versus I forget who other half of that is, which found that expansion of Medicaid was a fundamentally different program than regular Medicaid, and therefore couldn't be mandated by the government. It had to be elected by the states, which led to the ability to opt in or out. So whatever, Florida versus Texas are all three Medicaid opt-out states. So you've got folks making more than $2,000 a year, but less than $12,000 a year, who therefore don't qualify for any help whatsoever. They're just totally hosed. And this freaked my bean. I did not understand how this thing could work. I got a job at an insurance company where I still work, unfortunately, because I thought the ACA could work. And if it was only like given the right resources, I wanted to see how that thing worked on the ground. I was wrong, and I've been. This is my penance for being wrong. When I figured I could kind of wait it out, go work for HHS under Hillary Clinton, and endure that for a while, and get on board a single payer movement. And my end goal, very nakedly, is to work for a single payer. I want to do what I do for a single payer. I think I'm good at what I do, and I would like to do it for Medicare. No problem.
Do you do like actuarial
of course,
work?
Clinton biffed it.
Right.
I'm all over the map. It's not actuarial work. I spent the early part of this year making maps of where combinations of disease and social determinants live. So like where intersections of diabetes and homelessness.
Okay.
I do a lot of like customer support tooling. I do a lot of modeling of other kinds of things, like a lot of like risk analysis, which is useful because you want to know where people have diabetes. You want to know where what doctors are treating patients that have diabetes. You want to know where people are food insecure and have diabetes. You know, try to build maps to send social workers, nurses out to do that.
So you're like literally on the front lines of all of the most depressing information, basically.
Yeah, I can tell you, for example, that San Antonio was the capital of diabetes-related amputations. Largest, it's just southwest corner of San Antonio, leads the country.
They should put that on the flag.
What's Louisiana's thing? Do you know? No.
Yeah. What do we rule
You
out?
have a lot of cancer. I mean, you've got
Cancer Alley.
Cancer Alley.
Yeah, Cancer Alley, and that's of course related to environmental conditions. I don't look at Louisiana data, so I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that you're environmental related. You guys in like Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania was going through a similar process where they wanted to build basically a new series of power plants that would build a new Cancer Alley, basically.
Oh,
and
cool.
I think they went through with it. But Louisiana was the model they looked at, saying, here's what would happen as a consequence if you build power plants.
Yeah.
They went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, like, we're doing a lot of things that make people very sick all across the country, and we have not had to deal with the ramifications of that. And let's say a single payer probably won't. We'll just keep pushing those that agony on the people that suffer it and not deal with that as a government response until people get squished and die, which sucks.
Yeah.
Do you find, so you travel and you give talks, right? Do you find it difficult to get through to people? Basically, it seems like part of your work is to have to remind healthy people that they're frail and that they'll die and that they'll get sick. And it seems like, like the whole like Freudian cliche of like it's impossible to think about your own death or impossible to take it seriously or whatever. Do you find that there's like a cognitive block for healthy people in being persuadable?
Most folks have a person they love who is sick, and that's the way in. And most folks who are healthy have felt dicked around by their insurance company. And so that like little, you said before, stand up is finding the Venn diagram to slip into. And that's usually where it is. People are afraid of their loved ones, people they love, their friends, their whatever, not being able to afford their own basic health care. And they see that Blue Cross is fucking them over at the same time. And kind of like in that combination, like why do these things exist in parallel? Is how I find getting across to folks is easiest. Now, like, doesn't work with everybody. Some folks you just can't reach. But my bet is that there's more of us than there are of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like the tide is turning that way for sure. Can you just speak to why a single payer system is drastically different to, like, just give your pitch for single payer. Like, why does this solve so many of these problems?
Cool. So my one-line summary is that we pool together all the money we currently spend on healthcare and use it to take care of all people comprehensively long-term. Medical, mental, dental, visual, long-term care are all paid for using the money we already spend to pay for healthcare. Here's how it looks right now. If you want to go to the doctor, you got to have insurance. Then you got to find a doctor who's a network, and you got to go pay the copay for the office visit. And you got to hope you hit your deductible.
Can you talk just for a second? Just to reel it back for a second, what network is and
network is the list of doctors you can and can't go to, which is determined by your insurance company. That's it.
And like how that happens.
Insurance companies build agreements with doctors and with hospitals saying, hey, like hospitals have a sticker price that's arbitrarily high. Medicare pays down here. Insurance companies will say, and for listeners, I'm pointing at the top and the bottom of my screen. Insurance companies will say, hey, if we send patients your way, give us a rate that's somewhere in the middle of that.
Right.
Usually they pay between 3 and 7 times what Medicare reimburses hospitals for. And if they play ball, if the hospital agrees, that hospital is now in network. If the hospital wants too much money, per the insurance determination, or if they can't agree on a price, that hospital is out of network. So if you're in a like New York has 5 major hospital chains, I made the number up, but there's a bunch of major hospital chains, of which maybe like 2 or 3 might be in, or maybe even 1, if you're really fucked, might be in network for a given insurance plan. But if you live near the wrong hospital, so to speak, or if you get hit by a car and go to the wrong facility, or if the doctor you want to see changes to a different hospital or changes insurance networks, you're SOL. So a network is like if every doctor in your city or your town were on like a menu of doctors you could go see, insurance companies cut out part of the menu and give it to you, and that's all you can order. So you got to go through all these hoops. Hope you find a doctor in network, pay your part of the bill, hope your deductible, pay the rest, pay your copay. This big tangled mess of things that get between you and your health. Under single payer, you go to the doctor, you go to any doctor you want, you get whatever healthcare you need, and you don't pay it. Easy. And it works because right now we spend $3.4 trillion. Is it 3.4 or 3.9? Let's say $3.4 trillion a year on total healthcare spending in the U.S. Part of that is Medicare, Medicaid, VA, IHS. Part of that is this grift and fraud. A big part of it is waste, and the rest is money that you pay in your copays, your premiums, your deductibles, your out-of-pocket costs. Single payer lumps those together, makes it one pot, and can cut a lot of the fat and a lot of the waste out of it, cut out the excess of the insurance company. Right now, there's 2 stats I got. PERI, Political Economy Institute, predicts that a single payer would cost 10% less than what we currently spend to cover all people in full. So we're really losing money, but not to. Second stat is that single healthcare costs will increase to $4.7 trillion in the next decade. A single payer keeps it relatively flat. So we're throwing away trillions of dollars by sustaining our current model of keeping private insurers and hospital corporations and PE firms very happy and very profitable.
One thing that fucking blew my mind in your book, I think you said the cost to nationalize would be like $250 billion, like $250 billion, like something that seemed very low to me. And
and that was granted in the immediate aftermath of the recession.
That's a good point.
It's a figure I got from Jacobin. But even if it were, let's say, $1 trillion,
right,
we still, compared to the 3 or 4 we spend per year, that amortizes very nicely over the cost of a decade.
Right.
Like we would save that much money by switching to single payer, and we wouldn't have insurance companies to deal with.
And then people themselves would save their own lives and so much money.
Yes, and like your out-of-pocket costs, your total spending on healthcare between taxes, premiums, and out-of-pocket spending would significantly decrease, unless you're making a shit ton of money, in which case, like, you're fine. I don't care.
Right. Yeah. You're gonna be good.
It's more than just like a refigure. Like, there's 2 things there. One is like you're making a more efficient model. You can spend money more wisely. Folks spend less out of pocket.
Cheers.
But isn't it?
Thank you.
Secondly, that single payer can do things that like a fragmented insurer base can't do. I mentioned before that insurers need hospitals way more than hospitals need insurers. It's not the case under a single payer.
Mhm.
If there's one insurance company, hospitals got to take what that insurance company offers, or else nobody has insurance and they don't get paid.
Mhm.
So if an insurance company says, if a single payer says, hey, we looked at how much a knee replacement costs, and we're going to pay $30,000 for a knee replacement, adjusted for where you're at and difficult for the patient, whatever. But with $30,000 to take it or leave it, hospitals got to take it, or else nobody is going to pay them any money at all.
Mhm.
They can play hardball, and through cost regulation, bring prices back to where they should be. You're playing on an even field between a negotiator and a provider. And so long as you have like multiple insurance companies, a public option, whatever, you're just never going to have them. They just can't do these things.
Mhm.
What would you say to people that are worried about doctors not getting paid enough to justify going to medical school?
I've got a couple of things to that. One is that, how do I phrase that? Let me click on my document. I have a document up already.
Me too.
Right now, doctors spend half of their time dealing with insurance companies, right? They have to go in the back room. The way it's set up right now is doctors mostly get billed per diagnosis. Sorry, my computer is beeping at me. I don't know why.
It's usually us, so it's good that it's you.
Well, turn the button off. I installed the fucking messenger. And okay, whatever. Doctors spend half their time dealing with insurance companies.
Yeah.
Usually, you get paid per diagnosis or per like unit of care, and which means you got to really optimize for getting diagnoses, get people in the door, diagnose, get them out, or doing procedures. Which means like the soft care, like talking to a person, being nice to them, giving them like primary care, compassionate labor is severely undervalued. So you have nurses that you have to hire nurses and people who shuttle your patients in. You go in there, give them your diagnosis, the little back room, fill out a chart, and try to get a payment from the insurance company. That means that half of your time you're spending on those charts is money you can't spend seeing patients and therefore losing money. Nurses spend a quarter of their time dealing with patients. So right now what a single payer does is instead of having to go back and figure out whether or not this person is Blue Cross, Silver Plus, or Aetna Vermilion, or I don't know, like insurance plan 1013C or whatever, you have one button. You push one button, enter the patient, enter what you did, you get guaranteed payment. And that time you saving on not spending time fucking with insurance companies, you can spend seeing patients. You can put the money in actually providing care. So most doctors will be just fine because the time they can spend, their billable hours go up as opposed to their time they spend finagling with insurance companies. They can do more work for more folks around them, which is good because you've got more folks who have insurance, more folks will want to see doctors, more folks will be able to see doctors. Everybody's happy with this.
Another like bad faith argument, I feel like, but I guess some people honestly believe this, but something I hear a lot of the time about our system compared to other like universal coverage systems is that people are clamoring to come to the United States for our care because we have this like specialized brilliance in these like rare treatments that don't happen other places. Can you just talk to that? And is that completely a myth? Is there something to that? How would that change? That is
true if you're rich. That's all it is. If you got money, you can go to Cleveland Clinic, Johns Hopkins, Mayo Clinic, best in the world. No question there. But they're not giving like heart transplants to folks in the U.S. who can't afford it, right? You can go there and get your rare therapy or whatever if you have the Skrilla to be able to afford to go pay for these things out of pocket. There's a secondary tier or there's a tertiary tier of healthcare coverage and good treatment for folks that have the means to afford it on their own.
Right.
And so like I don't think we use the arguments of like the hyper wealthy to argue against building a single payer model. Like that's not going to go away. Even under a single payer, like these like wealthy folks could come in and go to especially hospitals, but like a hospital could in theory not accept Medicare for all and only go out of pocket and only deal with hyper wealthy. Like Tom Brady's doctor is not going to take Medicare for all. He's going to receive out of pocket costs from Tom Brady and not need another patient his entire life. But that's still going to exist. You're going to see some degree of doctors who open up private practices where they don't receive Medicare for all payments and only treat the hyper wealthy, hyper rich. And like that's already happening now. Not a big difference. Just now it's being called out in the open for what it is. But like in general, like quality of care in the U.S. is not that much better. In some cases, much worse in other countries. wait time for a knee transplant in LA or in Boston is way worse than wait time for knee transplants in the UK. We have long wait times. We have low care quality. It just only happens if you are like a normal person or a person who, I guess, if you're not a wealthy person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You wrote in your book that, like, among developed nations, America is the most dangerous place to be a child, a woman, gay, old, and one of the most dangerous places to be disabled.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it doesn't seem like people are clamoring to get here to wait in line for Blue Cross Blue Shield.
The only folks people who come to the U.S. to get medical care are rich.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it works. And that is kind of like upper crust people getting specialized healthcare because they can afford it out of pocket. Should not exist, but like is not threatened by a single payer existing. Like they'll be fine.
So I am in remission from major depression, and I pay, because my deductible is so high, I pay for all my meds out of pocket through GoodRx, which has. Can you talk? How the fuck does that work? It is very
secondhand prescriptions.
It's
Whatever it is.
It's very mysterious to me. Yeah.
Okay. I just found a GoodRx for my girlfriend like last week because her insurance company wouldn't cover the drug she needed.
Yeah.
So we bought it out of pocket. So remember I said prices are fake. Here's a good example of that. How do I lay it out? So a drug company makes a drug, and they have like a market price, and that market price is high because Medicare prices are set based on that market price.
Right.
So it has to be very, very high.
Oh, this is the rebate thing.
Right.
Okay.
So I will set my drug at costing $10,000 because then Medicare has to pay $8,000.
Right.
But I can offer, but I still need people to get this drug, even if they can't pay $10,000, because even them paying me $200 is still like way more than the cost of using the drug, which is like $2 or $3, right?
Right.
So insurance companies negotiate prices with drug companies, and they can bring that down to a couple $100, a couple $1,000, whatever. And then they have a deal with like CVS or Walgreens or whatever, your pharmacist, where there's like an intermediary called a PBM, a pharmacy billing company or pharmacy benefits manufacturer manager who deals with like negotiating prices with drug companies and insurance companies. They're like a middleman. They take a cut from both sides and then send over the order to a CVS or Walgreens. But like if your insurance doesn't cover that drug, or if you don't have insurance, the pharma company still wants to make money off of it. So they might offer really severe rebates to the insurance company, because that way they can say the sticker price is $10,000. Then they give you an $8,000 rebate. Therefore, the actual cost is $2,000. They still get to keep those prices high, so Medicare has to pay the high prices at the end.
Right.
So
and
GoodRx is kind of like a middleman of its own, where you get that rebate, you get a virtual rebate, which doesn't actually affect the sticker cost of what the drug company sells it for, but you can still afford to buy the drug, and the drug company makes a lot of money off of it anyway.
Right, and if you pay like 20% coinsurance on your meds, then you're paying 20% of that sticker price, and the insurance company is just pocketing the rebate, right?
Right, exactly. And there was in California, there was a big lawsuit on the gag order, in which if I'm a pharmacist at Walgreens, it might be cheaper for you to go out of pocket and use the coupon than it is to get it through your insurance company. But I'm not allowed to tell you that.
Yeah.
You got to go through your insurance company if you got your prescription through them, so that they can get that rebate and they get the money, even though you're paying off that sticker price. Exactly.
Fuck.
It's stupid. No one designs these things. These things are fundamentally, well, people do design them, but no one would design this from the ground up if they're building a new model. These things are very stupid, and they're very profitable.
They're completely inorganic. There's no way this would ever emerge without like a bad incentive.
Right.
Yeah.
I compare it to one of those old monasteries that's built like 1,000 years ago, where they build the monastery and they tear down a wall and build a new room, then tear down 2 walls, make that into a new room. Like you have this honeycomb of
totally ad hoc
things that were built like haphazardly over a century, and the result is this big, weird, stupid building that nobody can afford to live in.
So you differentiate between like healthcare and the fight for single payer, and then this broader idea of health justice. Can you speak to what health justice is beyond even what single payer could accomplish, and like maybe why single payer is like a stepping stone to this more like beautiful goal?
Sure. So we all know, I'm thinking of like, what was it? LaSalle, the one in the cancer city in Louisiana?
Laplace.
We were talking about Laplace and cancer rally. We know that like a cancer rally just because, what was it? Like rigs make pollutants that make people sick. Is that how it works? I forget what the core cause of the cancer epidemic of cancer rally is. What industry?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
Some kind of refineries.
Yeah.
Wait,
Okay.
here, I'll
The
find out.
refineries produce silt or whatever. Silt gets into the air, gets in the ground, gets in the water. People get cancer as a result, right? All these like there's toxic waste being buried in the ground in the Bay Area. All these things that make you sick that have nothing to do with your actual like doctor's office visit, right? The things that make you sick, the things that make you healthy are determined by forces well outside your office. Things like housing and food and safety, our environment, whether we're safe, whether we're being exploited because of our gender or our race, our sexuality, or our age, whether we have disabilities. These are in aggregate much stronger predictors of your health outcomes than the medical care you receive. Healthcare happens outside the hospital, where health is determined outside the hospital more than it is determined inside the hospital. And so health justice is the understanding that when we move towards one of these things, we are building a healthy. Like here's an example. Once the single payer is forced to pay for everybody's healthcare costs, and so it's forced to reckon with the things that happen when people do receive healthcare, when people don't receive healthcare. If people are getting sick because they don't have a place to live, and so they're homeless and they're exposed to the cold, so they're going to the hospital 4 times a month because they're getting sick from cold exposure or heat exposure, those costs increase. And so then we understand that housing costs are healthcare costs. If you want to bring healthcare costs down, you got to invest in safe social housing people can afford to live in, or that's free to live. People are getting sick because they don't have food to eat. It's not profitable to sell a pork, horse, and vegetables. And so they're getting diabetes or comorbidities like cardiac failure. Then food is healthcare. And you got to invest in safe social food programs and the time, space, and materials with which to prepare food to bring healthcare costs down. Same with the environment, same with fair wages. Like all these things contribute to health. And so health justice is a movement that all these things are interconnected in the movement towards health equality and health justice. And a single payer doesn't solve these problems on its own, but because it is accountable for what happens when people don't get these healthcare needs, it's the only lever we have towards realizing this kind of broader solution, this broader goal. In Chicago, a couple of hospitals saw that their patients were coming back over and over and over again because they were homeless and so they were getting sick in the winter. And so they began building housing to house those patients. And they saved $8 million over I think a decade, which is great. But like individual hospitals should not be the arbiters of who gets to receive housing and when. Like these are like pretty, like New York Medicaid, for example. New York Medicaid spends a lot of money on housing because it understands that homelessness and house people are the main drivers of healthcare costs in New York Medicaid programs. Same while you see people getting involved with like OUD programs or rehab programs in Medicaid. Medicaid is leading the way on a lot of these things. And so health justice is the idea that when we move towards things like safe social housing or free kitchens or some of the police, we are building greater health equity. These things are all interwoven. These things are all related. And they can all share common root, common leverage in the single payer.
Yeah. And that's what makes healthcare such a great cause for socialists to take up. Why do you think the ruling class is like so many countries like socialized medicine came from like the ruling class throwing the people a bone so that the socialists don't get too much traction? Like, what is it about the United States? Is it just like the total lack of union density? Like, what is it about the United States that makes billionaires so completely fearless in their shitting on people?
I don't know, because no one we've suffered through Reaganism, right? We've seen like the shattering of unions. We've seen the shattering of like solidarity movements. I think they do it because they can. I don't know if there's a lot of
also because of Reaganism. Reaganism is like the main reason that the New Deal too, but like Reaganism was like the reinvigoration of people being afraid of social programs because they were aimed at like black people will get these. Like, I think that America is unlike, I mean, there's a lot of like xenophobia in other developed countries for sure, but like America's the place that I feel like is most just like, oh, if black people get it, it's bad. Like, I don't know. That's what I think. But
You see that in like Medicaid stuff, right? I was talking about it earlier. Medicaid is made weak because you have a wedge and say, oh, like these people, these black people, these Mexican people, these poor people, these disabled people are getting these things you don't have, therefore it's cut the program.
Right. Yeah, I remember the way that we learned about I went to private Catholic school, and I remember that we learned about Medicaid versus Medicare was like poor or old. And so, and like they weren't, I don't think any of our teachers were like right wing or trying to teach us, but I felt like there was an overwhelming sense that like Medicaid is the bad one and Medicare is the good one anyway.
No, yeah, I mean, they're teaching that to fucking kids.
Yeah.
They're some kind of like
And I did go
kidney
to private
transplant,
school. Right.
like queen.
Right, exactly. That like, I don't know. I think that it makes sense that our politicians don't, anything that's like quote unquote giving someone something. There's like so much racial stuff, like you mentioned, but that makes sense to me.
How do you think we get there? How do we get single payer, and how do we get to like the awakening of single payer being a stepping stone towards broader health justice dreams being realized?
So that's two good questions. First, how do we get to single payer? It's going to require a massive popular movement. Even like benevolent presidents, so to speak, benevolent senators and policy folks and whatever have tried to win universal health care, and they've been beaten by a reactionary establishment class that can outgun them, outspend them, etc. The only thing that has worked to win health reform movements, has been massive popular protest, massive popular movements.
Right.
A good example is ACT UP. It's insane that ACT UP won, because the odds against ACT UP were insurmountable. Right? We had a sitting president who thought that AIDS was the gay plague and therefore a good thing. And yet, like within a decade, we had federal funding of HIV drugs, antiretroviral therapies.
Do you want to describe what ACT UP was?
Yeah, ACT UP was a pretty massive movement of people with HIV, drug users, homeless people, single mothers. It was a big coalition of folks.
Generally cool people. Yeah,
the people you want to party with. Who put together a massive coalition and did a lot of protesting and organizing from this 80s and 90s. It was really broad-based, broad uniform-based. It wasn't just people who have HIV/AIDS. It was a really massive coalition. And they did things like, it was like they would lobby mayors, they would lobby senators, they would lobby House reps. They did big theatrical things too, like the AIDS quilt, die-ins, etc., which is good. Not really my jam, but like certainly pretty useful, good symbology. They were a pretty effective lobbying arm, pretty effective protest arm in an era when that kind of protest was more effective than it is now, honestly. But they won. They won in part because it was profitable for drug companies to make new AIDS drugs, but they found a coalition and they won. They beat the odds when there was massive odds against them. ADAPT is another example. ADAPT is not an acronym, just is the word. Disability Organization Community, who fought for and won long-term care and home health over the past 40 years by showing, they're the folks that kept the AHCA from being passed by getting, like, they'd show up at the Capitol, protest, get locked up, get dragged to the bus in their wheelchairs, get their tubes broken, then show up the next day over and over again, to a point where they couldn't be ignored, and the AHCA ended up not being passed. So, like, here's my approach. Here's how I think about it. Like, even if Bernie wins, and knock on wood that he does, because only Bernie is actually back in single payer, that alone isn't going to pass the thing. What does pass it is a series of, I think, mass movements that kind of unite together under a banner of health equity. I think that when you fight for and win things like minimum wage increases or housing programs or paid sick leave, which is big right now in Texas, these are like, or Medicaid expansion in Idaho is a really, really big one. These kinds of material reforms that give folks things now help you build a constituency which can be woven together in the future to win single payer, right? A person who you go out there and win paid sick for, and who gets paid sick, is probably going to be able to, or be interested in, fighting for single payer when that thing's time comes, right? But I think you got to build these things now and win what you can locally. That's the only way I see through it. But then again, I'm just some guy.
No, it's a lot easier to connect the dots personally when you see some kind of victory and some kind of coalition and that someone has your back in general in this fight, because otherwise it's designed to be complicated and insurmountable for people. So if you don't have someone like directly next to you who's fighting for the same thing that you're fighting for and you've won a small victory together, it's really hard to take on the fight of like, we need to make it so I can go to the hospital and not die.
Right. A good example of that is the Maine People's Alliance, which is located in Maine, obviously. They fought for and won they've been like really active for, I think since the 70s, maybe the 80s, fighting progressive fights. They fought for and won a minimum wage increase, I think in 2014. They won by quite a bit. And they took all the folks that won the minimum wage increase and put them out to get signatures to put Medicaid expansion on the ballot in 16. They got all the signatures they needed in literally one day. It was election day, and put that in the ballot, Medicaid expansion. And they won, I think, by 57%, 43%. They won one thing and immediately turned that around into winning another thing. And that's how you build movements. That's how you build enduring movements, right? You can build constituencies and then turn them out to win, or turn out together to win the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I don't think there's like a single movement for single payer. I think there's a big quilt, a big jumbled quilt of movements across the country that can be brought together to demand single payer. But I think you got to win those things by winning what you can locally and then building that foundation for the big fight. I think to his credit, Sanders gets that. Sanders is always coming out for union fights.
Yeah, he's using his mailing list to support strikes and to like report ICE raids and shit. Yeah, legend.
And I think his campaign, I think Sanders himself really get that like he needs that mass movement for other things beyond just electing him.
Right, because I mean, even if like we win the House, which we want, I mean, win the Senate, which we want, like we're gonna have to continue to defend. Once single payer gets passed, we're gonna have to defend it constantly. Forever.
I mean, look at the fucking NHS right now.
Like the courts are so
it might
hostile.
not exist in 2 years.
Right. Yeah. Do you guys have any more questions?
I mean, I could talk to you all day.
Answer to Benjamin's second question around like what happens next. So what single payer does, I think, is it unshackles Americans in a lot of ways. Right now, your healthcare, your kids' healthcare is dominated entirely by your employer. You got a shitty boss, you got a shitty job, you can't do anything about it because your kid's like asthma inhaler is on the line. If you are in a dangerous relationship and that person controls your insurance, they control your health. You can't leave, you can't do anything about it. What single payer does is kind of it removes the boot from the throat just a little bit and it gives you the space to fight for the next thing. It's freedom to organize, freedom to gather, freedom to form unions, freedom to fight for the things that you need. And that's how you kind of build. It is like the fulcrum by which we kind of push down and demand the next bigger thing. I think you'll see a rise in union activity, in strikes and in protests, because no longer can your boss cut your kids' health care if you dare demand your fair share of the profits of the fruits of your labor.
And I really don't see, like, with the urgency of climate change in the 21st century and us being in, the spot of like hegemonic power here in America, if we don't figure out how to win something big like single payer and, like you said, give us that freedom to like fight together for other things, I don't know how we could take on climate change in a way that doesn't lead to catastrophic mass death. Like at this point, we have to win this fight, in my opinion, because we have to win a big fight, because what's on the line is truly like extinction within the next like 150 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just exposition to me, but like we have to win this fight pretty quickly, in my opinion.
Here's open.
Yeah. The final question that I like to ask is like, what is taking up the most brain cycles? Like, what are you thinking about right now? Like, this is all stuff that you've been talking about forever. I'm sure that like, some of it is almost by rote at this point. So like, what in your, what are you doing right now that you're excited about other than the work that you've been doing for however many years?
Oh, like outside of healthcare altogether, or like within healthcare?
Outside of healthcare altogether.
I run a wrestling league in Austin, Texas, called Party World Wrestling. It is one of them. It might be America's biggest. Certainly, we're certainly the biggest thing that we do. We bring in about 2,000 people per show.
Holy shit!
Is pretty huge.
Yeah.
We started off as being a joke that got too big and we kind of rolled with it.
Right.
It was a backyard party in 2014 where I got high and announced. We all put on costumes and shouted and shoved it. We built a ring out of Home Depot materials, mattresses.
Nice.
And kind of shove each other. And now it's like a full scale wrestling show. All internal talent, big wild storylines. We are a death cult. We venerate a worm who lives in the center of the earth. Our main champion is a big oil man from Dallas. Our main hero is a goat. We have a horse that can bench press. That kind of shit. Just wild, dumb things that we party very hard.
How does the horse hold on to the dumbbells?
Pardon?
How does the horse hold on to the dumbbells?
Just uses the soups, no problem.
All right, cool.
His name is Bench. So here's how that works. The world bench press record was set by a 300-pound man. Average horse weighs 2,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So if a horse could bench, it would be an unstoppable killing machine.
Yeah.
And horses don't have any kind of moral fabric like we do. Horses just know to eat and to kill. And so this horse is unstoppable in the ring, and also he's not a bad guy because he's not doing it. He doesn't think he's doing anything.
He just is.
He's been grown on a diet of human growth hormone, horse growth hormone, oats, mythical blood oats. Like this, he's a dangerous steed. But
wait, do you live? Oh, sorry. Do you live in Austin or you live in New York?
I live in New York.
You live in
I used to live in Austin.
Okay. But you still run yeah. Okay.
You commute for these giant 2,000 person shows. Yeah.
When we have a staff of about 120.
Jesus
and so I do a lot of remote work. Get everybody in line and happy.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Well,
it's a good show. Come on and see it.
When's the next one?
The next one is March 14th.
March 14th. All right. Go see that if you're in Texas. We actually do. Our second most populous listener state is Texas. So maybe they'll come see you. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Do you have anything you want to plug other than your book, Health Justice Now?
I'd say the book is a great gift for, I don't know when this is coming out, but it's always a great gift no matter what time of year it is.
Yeah, it'll be a good New Year's gift.
Yeah.
Like a really, really late Hanukkah gift.
Right on. All right, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.
Peace, dude.